Hey everyone, welcome to today's stream. We're doing something a little special, something we kind of played around with last week, which was kind of doing treating the live stream like a bit of a video essay. I've been wanting to do a video essay for a long time on The Last of Us Part 2 and the flaws that I have in it. And after like last week's stream, I feel like I kind of got it like out of my system. And so I started looking at my list of video essays that I want to do for my channel. And one thing that I learned last year is that video essays take a substantial amount of work, and it's the kind of work that is not too big of an ask, I think, if YouTube is your main gig. But I am, I have a day job, and then right now I have a lot of other things that I'm doing on top of my day job to advance my career. And you know, um yeah, so it's harder for me to kind of find the time to do that on top of other things in my life. So I'm gonna try doing this thing where the live streams are the video essays. At least for the ones that are a little more easy, that are just a matter of putting clips together and stuff. And Yeah, so today I decided to start with one that I think I've touched on lightly throughout the streams here before. And that's sort of the difference between Jurassic Park fans and Star Wars fans. And it's not the first time that I've talked about this. I have a video essay. Maybe I'll react to it later if we have the time for it. But I did a video essay. I think my very first video essay was called Dark Middle Chapters, and it was just about that. It was just about the difference between um, Jurassic Park fans and Star Wars fans, and how they responded to at that time Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic and The Last Jedi. And since then, I've only noticed that I've noticed that the trajectory of both franchises have pretty much kind of played out more the same, and yet the fan base has been very different in its reaction. I'm going to be real with you guys. I have covered a lot of angry Star Wars fanboys on the stream before. I think we all know their grievances very well. So today's going to be a lot more Jurassic Park heavy. We're gonna watch some Star Wars content. Don't get me wrong. But I think you guys know how I feel about channels like Mauler or the Critical Drinker or Nerdrotic and stuff like that. So I don't really feel like spending too much time uh regurgitating their points of views. We know them. We'll address them. We'll bring them up, and then we'll sort of towards the end catch back up with them and to as to where they are now. Um, yeah, and so I was going to say yeah. So let's go ahead and kind of get started here now. One of the things that I've said before about sort of the difference between Jurassic Park and Star Wars and stuff is that the sort of inherent themes of each like franchise, right? Um and Star Wars, as much as I do love it, and I am a Star Wars fan, I'm much more of a Jurassic Park fan, if I'm gonna admit my bias right here. But Star Wars is, very much wish fulfillment, right? It's the hero's journey. And like I said before, the whole kind of the plot of Star Wars is a random nobody who lives in a small town and works on the farm realizes that he is the most important person in the galaxy, that he's destined for greatness, and that he's sort of kind of like, um going to become this legend. And I think sort of the themes of the first movie got wrapped up into how people viewed the saga as a whole, because originally Star Wars was just one movie, right? It was just a single movie. There was no guarantee of any sequels and stuff like that. Lucas had some ideas, and I think something that a lot of, because let's face it, most people don't, very very rarely do people attempt creative writing for the fun of it, let alone professionally, or really care to understand sort of the nuances of storytelling and stuff like that. So when they hear, George Lucas had a plan for the sequels after the first movie, a lot of people kind of have this idea in their head that like, oh, he knew the entire story from beginning to end, every single detail and stuff like that. And I think a lot of creators kind of say that sort of stuff. And that's how a lot of people interpret it. And I mean, you know, if you ever actually listen to writers talk, there is always that. You always have your initial outline, and I say this as someone who's written movies for myself, screenplays, you know, on my own like amateur, super low level, but you know, who has tried my hand at this sort of stuff. And what always ends up happening is that as you're writing, you have your plan, but while you're writing it in the moment, something doesn't feel right. You come up with a better, cooler idea. You know, maybe you realize your initial conception is completely trash, and then you find it a little more in the free form and stuff like that. And everybody kind of knows, also thinks like where do things go after this and stuff. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that every single person who knows what they want to do for the future has like every single beat figured out, or even if that is a good thing. You know, like a really good example of that not working out would be How I Met Your Mother, where they filmed the ending of that show years before the rest of the season, before the rest of the series, and the series kind of changed and like evolved past that storyline. And because they were so beholden to their initial plan, to their initial outline, they dragged the show to a worse state to hit that ending. You know, so the idea that writers generally have this detailed outline idea for every like sequel, just because they say, you know, they had an idea for sequels, is very flawed and is very exaggerated. And I think a very good little piece of evidence of that within Star Wars is the fact that, you know, if let's be real here, um, if George Lucas had it planned from the start that Luke and Leia were brother and sister, continuity is for wimps. Did he really say that? That's crazy. Hey, what's up, Michael Richardson? And I'm going to address the other comments here in the chat, but I do just want to get this out of the way. So yeah, like if George Lucas really knew that Luke and Leia were brother and sister from the very beginning, and he knew that in season in episode 6 that was going to be that was going to be revealed, and the episode 6 was going to be the sixth part of this greater story or whatever. If he really knew that, and he also had them make out in this in Star Wars, and also let's face it, set them up for a romantic triangle. That was clearly what the initial intention of that story was, of that plot line. If you believe those two things to be true, then you must also believe that George Lucas is a sick motherfucker. Okay, and I think George Lucas is a lot of things. I don't think he's a sick motherfucker. Okay, so the reason I bring all this up is because I think that is the legend of Star Wars. I think that is the big myth of Star Wars. And I think that's why a lot of people hate The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi is a deconstruction of the myth of Star Wars, the idea of Star Wars and stuff. And a lot of that idea is that Star Wars was destined for greatness because George came up with this idea for this entire greater story, and he knocked it out of the park. And then he was able to go back and add prequels and all this shit. But the reality is, no, he had an idea for one story. He knew he got this one story, so he put a lot of fucking work into getting this one story right. And if there was a possibility for a sequel, he knew where he wanted to go. That's just standard. That's kind of like that's the game right there. You know, it's really nothing special, and it's nothing that, like, especially if you're thinking in terms of like sagas and genres, is peculiar. And a lot of people use that to say, because he had all this shit, Star Wars was always inevitably going to be great. When in reality, a lot of people, including Lawrence Kasdan and other creators, other directors, with Ivan Kershner, came in and they had their own hand in shaping Star Wars. It's just that at the end of the day, George Lucas kind of took like almost entire sole artistic ownership over Star Wars because it was his saga in a lot of ways. But the reality of the creative process and what we know of the production of those movies is not the reality. It's not the myth that people make Star Wars as a sort of franchise out to be, you know? So I think a lot of the reasons that Star Wars fans are the way they are is because to them, that story of George and his initial idea, it's almost like the actual thing they are a fan of. Because I think Kathleen Kennedy, as much as people want to hate her, they've worked together. George Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy had a long working relationship. And oh shit, what's that? I just noticed that. Sorry. Um, but yeah, what was I saying? Hey, what's up, Crawling Chaos and Michael Richardson and Troy and Mika? I'll address what you guys are saying. As being so rapid, I'm about to address mine right now. I want to hear yours though, so let me get mine out the way here. So I think, something that a lot of Star Wars fans like, Kathleen Kennedy tells this story where when she accepted the Star Wars trilogy, sequel trilogy sort of or saga responsibilities, she talked to George about like what Star Wars is about to him. And she said something, and she said, like he described Luke was this dude in a little farmer town who had dreams of whose father owned like this shop. I think he owned a car garage or a camera store or something like that. And it was Modesto, by the way, which like I grew up not too far away from there. And so yeah, like he grew up in Modesto, which was at the time this tiny little town, farmer town, and he had dreams of something bigger, just like Luke. And just like Luke, he was escaping his father's legacy. It's just that instead of an evil empire, George Lucas' dad just owned a store. And so George Lucas reached in within himself and crafted this story from his own experience that appealed to the universal sort of sense of wonder that we all kind of have. And that's what makes Luke such a relatable character. And so when we also hear the story of George Lucas himself, a small town dude with great ambitions who comes up with Star Wars, which is a reflection of that, of his experience of doing that, it all kind of becomes this big like emotional mirror to a lot of people who are themselves very creative and very ambitious, but for some reason or another cannot bring themselves to make their own little Star Wars universe, at least not on the scale of a George Lucas. And so when The Last Jedi comes along and is a directed construction and all that shit, and it also changes with time away from that initial concept because um you know stories, genres especially, and mythologies and stuff like that, they eventually become revisionist, and once they become revisionist, they become meta and they become satire. And listen, you can say, Star Wars shouldn't be this and that when it comes to like the revisionist take on it, but if you have liked any Western movie since the 1970s, you have liked revisionist genre movies. In fact, Star Wars is in itself a revisionist Western film because it's taking the Western genre, which is in and of itself a product of the sort of Joseph Campbell thing, and sets it in space and puts it in the context of a great big soap opera, which is by definition revisionist. And that's why I believe Star Wars fans are the way they are. Crawling Chaos, let's hear your take. I think it stems from the fact that Star Wars 77 made a historic impact back then, so that generation was blown away. They showed the films to their kids, and kids think they have to be just as amazed. And then comes the prequels, and it was a big event, but I don't think you can create the impact from 77 again. Too many other cool effects from Star Wars has happened. No, that's a very good point. A lot of people seem to think that we should all keep being completely blown away 40 years later, despite all the stuff we have seen since then. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Marvel, Terminator. No, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And that's what I'm getting at too, right? Is that like Star Wars like was very groundbreaking at its time. But what happens with especially genres and these sort of big watershed movies is that they define a generation, and then a lot of people. Oh yeah, please do. I'll be happy to respond to anything anybody in the chat has to say. In fact, I'm gonna get back to what Troy and said here in a second because it's addressing what I want to move on here from. But yeah, like Star Wars was this groundbreaking thing, and it inspired a lot of people who went on to make Terminator and Harry Potter and Marvel and Lord of the Rings, and all of those movies are sort of built on what Star Wars brought. You know, it sort of evolved from it, and it's also commenting on it because that is the nature of art, and that especially over a span of 40 years you know? It's going to be something that eventually, if it stays being this traditional, like, repetitive story that is kind of replaying its own tropes and its own iconography, it's going to become boring. Um, and I think the thing is that, like what Crawling Chaos here commented on, is that, a lot of these kids grow up on Star Wars and stuff. They it becomes a part of their, like, nostalgia, a part of their identity, and part of their, like, what they seek for comfort. So they don't want it to change, and it becomes this sort of dramatic sort of battle where what's good for the story, which is to evolve and to change and to be revising itself and commenting on itself and evolving and growing, um is not what the most well, I wouldn't even say the most diehard, let's just say, like, the loudest, most whiny of the fan base, the ones that sort of set the narrative because they don't have nothing else to do but obsess over Star Wars. They essentially fight against it. And I think that's why Star Wars is so unique, in that, like, it's stuck in this place where it has to evolve, and yet, like, it can't. And there's this, we all know that Mahler has that bullshit little video where he hates on people for enjoying Star Wars for what it is, you know but ultimately it's that sort of, like, Star Wars needs to grow. If you think Star Wars should ever grow up, you're missing the point of what Star Wars is. And there's nothing wrong with what Star Wars is and being a sort of adolescent power fantasy. There's a place in that. There's a sort of a place in the simplicity of it. But to say that you want it to be this dark, edgy, super serious thing is totally missing the point. And it doesn't have to, and something that is dark and edgy and super serious is not necessarily mature. And something that is, like, a little more campy can be nuanced and mature in its own right. And so, um yeah, that's sort of the Star Wars end of things, and that's the unfortunate place where Star Wars finds itself today. And let's see what Crawling Chaos here has to say. I talked to people who were the right age when Harry Potter happened. I get that that's their Star Wars, and that's another thing too. We can make this video about the Harry Potter fan base. We can make this video about the Lord of the Rings fan base, because all of these franchises have had their period of, like, the golden era, or the golden one film when it comes to Jurassic Park, and then the disappointing stuff that came behind it. And yet, for some reason, Harry Potter fans do not have the sort of seething anger over the god, what's it called, the Grindelwald, the Fantastic Beasts, that sort of thing, the Newt Scamander trilogy, or the Hobbit trilogy, or the Jurassic World trilogy. You can make this video about any of those things. It's just I know more about Jurassic Park, and I find that more interesting. So we're gonna go with that one. But yeah, it is just like, and I think it is also about, like, generations in media in a lot of ways, because I say the first two generations of Star Wars fans, which I'll say is like the first generation of people who saw it in theaters, and then, like, the Gen X kids who grew up watching it. They grew up in a very traditional old school media landscape. And so for them, media is a lot more, their conception of it is rooted in this much more simplistic thing that also I think gets wrapped up in the nostalgia of it all. And that I think is also threatened by modernity in general. Star Wars has to share the spotlight with many other franchises these days, and I am one of the old Star Wars fans, but I do like new Star Wars. Of course, I don't like all of it. It's a mixed bag. Right, exactly. And it's going to have its ups and downs. Personally, I've kind of checked out on Star Wars, which is not I'm not exactly proud of. Like, I miss being excited for Star Wars, but ever since episode 9, and really, like, Solo, it's just been hard. It's been hard outside of Andor, but even then, I couldn't bring myself to finish it. So I want to address something that Troy McClure here said, I think when I first posted this going up, he said, "I will try to truncate it as best as possible. We all want to exist in both of these worlds, but for Jurassic Park, I just want to live in a world where dinosaurs existed. It was more about the awe of the situation. That's a very good point. With Star Wars, I not only wanted to be there, I wanted to be Luke, much more of a personal tie, hero's journey and such. I think it resonates a bit deeper and could lead to a more of an emotional experience. Hey, you know what? We're just, yeah, everything we were talking about here. Plus, it's kind of like three classics versus one, in my opinion. And yes, you're absolutely right. We're getting to that. I think any franchise will be a mixed bag when you keep making new shows or whatever after 40 years. And then Mikey Richardson here has to say, Star Wars has to have wars. It's a never-ending battle of good versus evil. You can't have a wish fulfillment where a perfect hero never fails and also keep the metaphor relevant to real life. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think, I think you see kind of sparks of it too, right? Because Rogue One, despite it not being all that great of a film in terms of like, I think sort of the film, the script and the sort of narrative storytelling, it's a very appreciated, it's a very well appreciated movie because it is something that is recognizably Star Wars, and that it's set right before the beginning of episode 4, but it's also its own unique thing and it has its own perspective, and I think that's what's so exciting about it. I don't think it's a very good movie, but when that movie works, it works really goddamn well. Luckily all that stuff is in the trailer, so you don't gotta see it. um, okay, so let's talk about the Jurassic Park and of all this. So for me, and I think it's something that Troy said here. I wanted to live, and I think, and to this day, like, when I think about like the core of why I love Jurassic Park is because, yeah, I want to go to Jurassic Park. I want to live that experience, and what makes Jurassic Park so great is that through technology, through its like use of CGI and practical effects, it brings a realistic tactility to viewing the dinosaurs and the sounds. Like, we don't know what dinosaurs sound like, but the sound design just sounds correct. It makes sense for some reason. When we see the visual design of the Velociraptor and we hear those Velociraptor noises, it feels natural. And when it has a realistic, you know skin texture, and it moves realistically, and the lighting is captured correctly, and because the movie is very careful with when it uses the practical and the CGI and what lighting conditions, it just all sells this very tactile, very realistic feeling that, like, the magic of Jurassic Park. Um and and as bad as all the movies are, every movie manages to get at least this feeling correct, of Jurassic Park, and that is of making the dinosaurs have a tactility, have a sort of verisimilitude that feels tactile in a weird way, and that makes like absolute sense, and that feels natural. Like the sound effect of the T-Rex roar is just a combination of a bunch of different dinosaurs, walruses, elephants, I think tigers. There's other animals all kind of mixed together, so it all sounds familiar, and yet when it's all brought together and when it's combined with this sound effect and all with this visual and all that shit, it all just feels right. It all just feels new, and it feels like it's there, like it's occupying a physical space. And when it does that, like, you picture yourself in that physical space, and with Star Wars, yeah, like, it is totally like Troy said, it is totally a much more like emotional sort of experience and stuff like that. And yet, at the core, and one of the big difference too is that, like, at the core of Jurassic Park is a cautionary tale, right? Whereas at the core of Star Wars, it's wish fulfillment. The point of Star Wars is like, yeah, it would be really, really cool to be at Jurassic Park. It's also a really horrible idea. Here is why. And then within there is this greater lesson about hubris and humility and critical thinking and all that shit. And so, as even if you're like a little kid, if you're just like a little bit smart enough, yeah, you'll love the dinosaurs, but you'll also kind of like hearing the discussion of these bigger ideas, and the way that the movie presents it it's accessible, it's understandable, even if you're 4 or 5 years old, why Ian Malcolm has a problem with all this. Even if you don't understand the machinations of capitalism and consumerism and all that shit, you understand that he is scared because like these are dangerous animals that can't be controlled. And the idea that Jurassic Park presents you that in the first like 30 minutes gives you that wish fulfillment. It gives you that famous shot of the valley with all the dinosaurs, the Parasaurolophus, the Brachiosaurus, and the Stegosauruses, and all that, like at the watering hole with the music playing. Like it gives you that, and then in the very next scene, it disillusions you by saying, "Hey, like let's talk about ethics," and it stays exciting and it stays fun, but because Jurassic Park the movie is so accessible, and also at its core such a intelligent and critical movie. When you're a kid and you grow up on Jurassic Park, it sets you up to be um a little more critical in your reasoning. I'm not saying that because you watch Jurassic Park as a kid, you grow up to be smart or whatever, but I think if you have a serious appreciation for it and you grow up with having better media literacy with time, uh that becomes part of your appreciation. Let's see. Let's go with what Bva here has to say. I really enjoyed Star Wars, but then I grew up. I didn't even bother with the prequels because I had moved on. I can't understand the fanatical love of the series. I get you, man. Like I felt like that for a long time until the Jurassic Park movies came out. And like, dude, like it was so funny for such a long time. I would like give people shit for like, yeah, like, dude, like it's Star Wars, dude. Like you're like in your 20s, get over it and shit like that. But then like the Jurassic Park trailers came out, the Jurassic World trailer came out, and like it just totally worked on me. And I was like, okay, I could never give anybody shit for feeling nostalgic ever again, and I still can't. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm 46 now, and I still don't see myself as a Star Wars fan since I still like most of the Star Wars content we get. I don't seriously expect to love it all. It's okay with me. Yeah, yeah, and we're gonna touch on that in a little bit. Honestly, I think the main reason Jurassic Park fans are more chill than Star Wars fans is because Jurassic Park fans has a more general consensus on the series, meaning there's less disagreement. I actually disagree with you on that, Jeremy. And we're gonna get on that. We're really gonna get on that because it's interesting that you think that. I get what you're saying about being fanatical about Star Wars. I think it's the younger generation who thinks they have to love Star Wars like their parents did. Like the consensus on the Jurassic Park or World movies is pretty universal among the fans, but with Star Wars, there are so many different. Okay, see, I really disagree with you on that because, well, okay, we're gonna address that in a second because I do want to talk about the books, right? Because I read the first book. I read Jurassic Park about I think like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. 2021, God, 3 years ago now. Anyways, I read Jurassic Park not too long ago. And oh hey, what's up, Bob of the old ways? It's funny that I've never even conceived of Jurassic Park fandom as an actual thing. Oh no, no, there is. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. But we are going to talk about that because I am a huge Jurassic Park fan. There is a little cottage industry, but it's way smaller than the Star Wars one, and it's nowhere near as vitriolic, or intense, and for good reason. And that's because Star Wars is a movie. It's made up. It was born of cinema, right? There were eventually extended universe novels and stuff like that and comics, but initially it was just a movie that was from a script that was completely George Lucas's original creation. Jurassic Park, on the other hand, it's based on a book. Now, I don't mean to humble brag, but when I was a kid, I was the first kid in my class to learn how to read. And I was super stoked on that. My parents were really stoked on that. They wanted to encourage that. So they got me a lot of books, and most importantly, like once I started writing stuff out, they got me a typewriter, and I would start writing little stories for myself, and then that got me to read other people's stories. And what I'm getting to is by the time I was in second grade, I was reading novels like big fat like Michael Crichton specifically because of Jurassic Park novels. Give me just a second here. And the first, because it was Jurassic Park, the first big novel that I ever read was Jurassic Park. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that my comprehension was 100% because I was like 7 or 8 years old. But the big parts, the big scary scenes and all that, that stuck with me. The river chase, the sequence with Alan Grant in the underground bunker with the ghost white velociraptors, like that part still like I'm vividly in my head, you know. That part was those parts were always great. Um and so yeah, and in those in between all the good writing and all that stuff, if for nothing else, you want to pick up Jurassic Park, the novel, because of just the string of absolutely legendary, incredible monologues, basically, of Ian Malcolm in the book. And I'm going to go ahead and read one here really quick, just to give you guys an idea of sort of the inherent sort of philosophy, and the way that it's presented too. Like I'll just read it. I'll just read it. You know. And by the way, this is not like what the I remember. What's in the book is way longer and even way more in depth. So this is going to be way more truncated. It's on Goodreads, so I'll just go ahead and read it right now. This is a monologue from Ian Malcolm in the Jurassic Park novel. You know what's wrong with scientific power? It's a form of inherited wealth. Most kinds of power require a substantial sacrifice by whoever wants the power. There is an apprenticeship, a discipline lasting many years. Whatever kind of power you want, president of the company, black belt in karate, spiritual guru, whatever it is you seek, you have to put in the time, the practice, the effort. You must give up a lot to get it. It has to be very important to you. And once you have attained it, it is your power. It can't be given away. It resides in you. It is literally the result of your discipline. Now, what is interesting about this process is that by the time someone has acquired the ability to kill with his bare hands, he has also matured to the point where he won't use it unwisely. So that kind of power has a built-in control. The discipline of getting that power changes you so that you won't abuse it. But scientific power is like inherited wealth, attained without discipline. You read what others have done and you take the next step. There is no discipline lasting many decades. There is no mastery. Old scientists are ignored. There is no humility before nature. There is only a get rich quick, make a name for yourself, fast philosophy. Cheat, lie, falsify. It doesn't matter. They are all trying to do the same thing, to do something big and do it fast. And because you can stand on the shoulders of giants, you can accomplish something quickly. You don't even know exactly what you have done, but already you have reported it, patented it, and patented it and sold it. And the buyer will have even less discipline than you. The buyer simply purchases the power. Like that's like Marxism. that, that is like a Marxist, that is like a critique, not just of sort of scientific knowledge, but scientific knowledge in the pursuit of capitalistic ends, as it sort of like, you know, puts it there very at the end here. Like Jurassic Park, the book, as a lot of people, as will happen with a lot of people, they will see the movie, they will read the book. The book has like these incredible you know, speeches from Ian Malcolm that are very thought-provoking, very entertaining in the way they're presented, very dramatic, of course. You know, like it was fun to read that, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. um and then not just that, but it's a very well written book that has layers of irony and thematic development, and the characters are way more drawn out and stuff. You know, it's a hell of a book, and essentially within the very first core like entries of the franchise, the novel and the book, it introduces an appreciation for more critical idea, critical reasoning, and philosophical ideas, you know. And that just kind of sets you up to appreciate things differently. And let's go ahead and go back here to the chat, see what's going on here. Let me see. The Star Wars prequel did get a lot of hate, and it's like those were kids at the time decided to be fanatic about them as a way to rebel against their elders. You know what? That's a good way to put it. I could see that because it's true. Like as everybody was like talking shit about how bad they were, there was a whole generation who was watching the Clone Wars and loving everything Star Wars. You're absolutely right. Of course, most did not hate the prequels. Just look at the money they made and the match at the merch sold. No, exactly. It's always just like the loudest ones, the loudest ones that take up the most oxygen in the conversation. Uh, I went to school for paleontology, so I can make content nitpicking Jurassic Park to hell if I wanted to. But I just love the books and movies so much that I don't care to do so. And that's pretty cool, man. That's awesome. We got a paleontologist in the house. And honestly, yeah, like I think Jurassic Park does have a reputation for inspiring a whole generation of people who are either paleontologists or went to have like an interest in those sort of fields. Jurassic Park is great for kids. I have seen several kids who got into dinosaurs because oh yeah, no, dude, I totally are you kidding me? That was like my thing. Like I introduced my nieces and nephews to Jurassic Park. To this day, whenever I hang out with them, we'll watch by the way, the greatest thing that Colin Trevorrow has ever done for the Star Wars franchise is the Battle at Big Rock, like short film in between Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. Like legitimately, like solid little movie, and like the kids love watching it. Like we watch it all the time. To this day, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that thing. But like, yeah, the kids, and not only do kids love it, but kids love it, and it's good for them. In that sort of like infotainment kind of way. I saw Jurassic Park in theater. Every kid in that theater was terrified in a good way. So many of the parents were freaked out because they did not expect a horror. Yeah, that's true. I think Jurassic Park was a lot of our first horror movies for a lot of us. I read Crying's novel when I was young. If I remember rightly, it was different in tone, and Hammond was not a good intentioned old man, but the antagonist also much more deaf. Oh no, yeah, it's a. I mean, the movie opens up with like I don't even know if I could say it on YouTube, but let's just say with the remains of an unfortunately, a dinosaur eats a kid is what I'm trying to say. I don't think that's too much. I don't think that's too bad to say. But let's see. I too watched Jurassic Park in the theater back in the day. Will never forget the sound as the rain is a T Rex. Yeah. Oh yeah, the sound design, right? Exactly. Okay. Well, but still though, that's legit. Like it was a fun thing to study. Same thing with Jaws. So I read at least a lot of people got into sharks after the movie, and many did not go. Yeah, but I think they had like a much more unfortunate attempt. All right, and so yeah, let's kind of talk about the sequels here a little bit because um Rich Evans the sexiest man alive, Rich Evans of Red Letter Media. I forgot if I think it was in the episode 9, Rise of Skywalker review. He made a very good point. He said that Star Wars is a fluke. He said that Star Wars that episode 5 turned out to be really goddamn good, and it would just enabled an entire franchise to be built off it. And that's actually very true. There's a podcast network and a podcast personality, Chris Antista, that I've been following for God 16 years now, since like 2008. Yeah, back when he was on Talk Radar. But he has a podcast network called Laser Time now, and on the Patreon he has a show called Sick of Star Wars, and it is an exhaustive podcast about the fandom of Star Wars. And a lot of people don't talk about the long gap between episodes 4 and 5. um and in that time, there were a lot of like books and comics and all this shit that was of very varying quality. And Star Wars was not the prestige franchise, from its conception to its end that a lot of people say it was. It was a goofy, franchise that was mainly aimed at kids. um I mean, it was all that, but then what happened was episode 5 came out, and it turned out to be a seriously, and I do mean like literally, like the tone is serious and all that stuff, like and not just that, but like a seriously good movie, like a well-made movie with well-written characters and well-developed themes and all this stuff. And the miracle of that, the miracle at the first Star Wars sequel turned out to be better than the original. That just enabled this whole franchise to flourish because of it and to gain a reputation. You know, a lot of the love, a lot of the legend of Star Wars comes directly from the success of episode 5, not so much from George. And that's not to say that like George Lucas is, you know, shouldn't take responsibility, but let's be real. Marsha Lucas saved Star Wars with her editing, and Ivan Kershner handed George Lucas an entire franchise with his directing of episode 5, you know. And I think the sort of legendary jump in quality from episode 4 to episode 5 is what allowed the sort of myth to flourish and stuff. That, you know, Star Wars, you know, was this really awesome kid thing, and then like, oh no, like, oh, this is like a seriously good movie. But another thing to remember, and another thing that a lot of, you know, these sort of neurotic guys like to not talk about, is that uh episode 5 was not universally beloved when it came out, right? It was very much like The Last Jedi. It just, you know, had the internet been around back then, it would literally be just like Last Jedi. The only reason why it's not as remembered as fondly is, again, there was no internet back then, so a lot of that hate was not, you know, permanently etched on the fucking internet records. They got lost to time in fanzines and stuff like that, and schoolyard conversations. But, you know, Star Wars was saved by episode 5 because it sort of gave it prestige, and then episode 6 was this a much goofier, much more family friendly, you know, action adventure movie that kind of went back to the roots, but had, you know, slightly more mature themes, and you know, had Leia in a bikini, and it had a bunch of like walking teddy bears and the Ewoks and all this shit. You know, what I'm saying is, Star Wars, you know, the original 3 movies were in and of themselves a kind of a mixed bag in quality, that only like became universally respected and beloved with time, you know, with distance and stuff like that. And the thing is that like that big jump, a lot of that, most of this came from that big jump between like the goofiness of episode 4 and the serious, like seriously good filmmaking of episode 5. All of it is hinging on that shit. And a lot of the fan base is spun directly just off of that jump, you know? Uh, let's see. Rich Evans got the laugh of an angel. He really does. He really does. Every time I hear that guy laugh, it's like a piercing, loud, shrill, painful, warm, fuzzy blanket. Let me see. I still give side eye to Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I never actually I don't really know a whole lot about the EU in detail, you know. I just know the sort of reputation of it. You know, but let's talk about the first 3 Jurassic Park movies now, right? Because again, everybody knows Jurassic Park is a fucking classic. The first movie is an absolute fucking classic. Now, personally, um I think the first 2 acts of The Lost World Jurassic Park are goddamn fantastic, honestly. I mean, obviously the script is not as strong in the themes, or in the character, at least at the shooting draft. I am enough of a Jurassic Park nerd to say that like the final draft before the production draft, that you know, was only going to be like 10 or 15 minutes longer. It was barely going to be like it should have been. This is such a regretful thing. It only would have been like 10 minutes longer if they would have gone with the original draft of the movie, and it would have been so much better because there's more. Most of what got caught out was just like dialogue and little character scenes and stuff like that, and all of them add so much nuance to the characters. Like Sarah Harding is dumb in the final cut and annoying, but in the final draft of the script before they got into the production draft, like she's a lot more likable, a lot more reasonable, and a lot more rational and shit. Her actions make sense. It's just a shame, you know. But regardless, you know, as much as I do love The Lost World Jurassic Park, it was until Fallen Kingdom my favorite sequel in the franchise. Um, let's face it, it is still divisive, and it's not the kind of divisiveness that ever went away. Like Jurassic, the Lost World, Jurassic Park. As much as I do love that movie, and as much as I do love the first two acts specifically, even in the first two acts, there's a lot of problems with the script in terms of, like I said, themes and characters. Like there is good thematic work there. It's just that the the handling of them and how each one is given space is wonky, mainly because uh at some point Spielberg stopped trying to make a film and wanted to make a fucking adventure, right? Let's be real. That's the problem with the last with the Lost World. And then by act 3, it just becomes apparent because it just becomes like silly, campy fun. And it is fun, but like the frustrating thing about the Lost World Jurassic Park is that you see a movie slowly stop trying. And when it's trying really hard, it's fucking amazing. But by the time you got the dinosaur running around San Diego, it's you can feel the movie kind of getting exhausted by its own premise. And um even me even me as someone who loves the Lost World, I have to admit those problems with it. um and I don't think there's anybody who unconditionally loves any of the sequels as much as people unconditionally love Jurassic Park. uh let's see. um I just personally have never seen so much hate around Star Wars until the sequels. Yes, there was stuff like around the prequels, but I never encountered it back then. Oh no, you're 100%. It is social media. Lost World gave us Kaiju movie in the third act. I love. See, that's funny. Like That's when the movie to me like stops being good because for for the first like the first the first act and the first half of the second act, like it's just kind of like a solid just kind of, how should I explain it? Yeah, it's like a really solid, just like adventure movie. And then like the late second act into the third act, when it's like this whole thing where the hunters and the gatherers, the scientists and the hunters, have to work together, and like it's the scientists who are like, objectively the villains who cause a lot of wanton, just like needless death and destruction because they think they're right. Meanwhile, the hunters are a lot more responsible and then are helping them despite the fact that the scientists tried to get them killed. Like this whole thing, like there is a lot of fascinating shit there. And then like for a minute there, it feels like the movie's almost like reaching those levels of like thematic development as the first one, and then it's a giant kaiju movie in the third act. That's for me what is why the third act is so disappointing. Lost World was okay, typical sequel, good but not great like the original. Oh, it's almost there though. And yeah, no, that's the thing. At the end of the day, I don't think to me, at its best, the Lost World Jurassic Park is the aliens to Jurassic Park's Alien. It's just like, whereas the first movie is this sort of tense, like border like more of a horror film. The second one is more of just like a straight up fun action movie. And I don't think anybody can fault the action filmmaking in the Lost World Jurassic Park. So, by the way, I'm really digging this. I'm really digging this format. I'm really I like this format of just like a live video essay where I'm just like preaching up here like that's cool. I'm digging this. I let me know if you guys like this. If you're watching this afterwards, let me know how this is working for you guys because I can get a lot more stuff out like this. I'm enjoying this, by the way. Um, but yeah, so let's talk about the cumulative effect of all that, right? Because Jurassic Park, by the way, never got the distance in between sequels that the Star Wars movies did, so that people would get all nostalgic and for it and mythologize it. A, the themes do not set it up for that kind of fan base to begin with. B, and because the second sequel to Jurassic Park was at best wonky and divisive, even to me, for someone who loves that movie, a very wonky an uneven movie and stuff like that. It never reached that sort of like legendary mythology of the Star Wars sequels. So now we're getting caught up to the modern times. We're going back to 2015. 2015, we have the sequels pop up, and they both kind of have the same trajectory. And I've said this before: Jurassic World and Episode 7 are movies that are essentially just remakes of the original, and they're basically remakes of the original because both studios wanted to reassure fans of both franchises that, hey, we know how to make Star Wars movies. We know how to make a Jurassic Park movie. Come watch this over and over again to get your nostalgia and get excited because we clearly know how to recreate this feeling, for you, right? And then the second movie, they give it to these art house auteur directors in terms of J.A. Bayona for Fallen Kingdom and Ryan Johnson in The Last Jedi. And they both, to varying degrees, leave their directorial artistic mark forever in the franchises by taking them in places that challenge like what the fan conception of these franchises are, of what a Star Wars movie is, and what a Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movie is, right? And this creates this great big controversy and this great big sort of split in the audience and how the reception is. And the different and then in the third movie, the studio kind of freaks out and makes a much more safer product, but in the end makes a movie that nobody likes and that probably no one's ever gonna speak fondly of at the end of the day. I mean, who knows, right? But like um the interesting part of it is what we're going to get into now. We're 51 minutes here. Compulsory Barry Lyndon comparison. If only there was like a Barry Lyndon extended universe, because you could totally, I would be happy to see that. I like to see what happens to Lord Bowlington after the events of the first movie. Obviously, I'm gonna actually enjoy watching JP3, like I enjoy watching. Okay, see, but I'm glad you said that, all right, because that's a part of it, dude. That's a part of it. Is that because the Lost World was not the big jump in quality that episode 5 was to episode 4. Like, we've all had to manage our expectations. We've all learned, for starting with the Last World, that when you go see Jurassic Park, Jurassic World sequel, you go there, you know, managing your expectation. So yeah, I think by the time Jurassic Park 3 came out, once you like vibe with it, once you understand, oh, it's gonna be like a 90-minute like straight to video Jurassic Park movie, but in the theaters. Okay, cool. William Macy, yeah, with William Macy and Taya Leone in the Jurassic Park movie. That's that's fucking insane. I mean, that's just like indie art house darlings, and that's so wild to me. But yeah, the Jurassic Park fans, we've had to fucking manage our expectations from the second one. And the flying dinos. That's the thing, right? Like I said, every Jurassic Park movie, no matter how bad they are, they all have moments of absolute brilliance, and that the pterodactyl cage sequence, definitely like the one of the best moments in the entire franchise, and easily the best part of that movie. Um, and gosh, what was I getting at here? Yeah, so now we have these sequels and we have the same thing, but let's go ahead and talk about how are these franchises now, and the sort of inevitable outcome of all the things that we've talked about, and let's see how that led to where audiences are right now with these franchises. And we're gonna start, like I said, we're gonna be doing a lot more coverage of the Jurassic Park end of things. And we're gonna start with probably the number one top G of the Jurassic Park fandom, and that's Clayton Fioretti. And he put this video out 5 days ago. We're gonna be watching it together here. This guy does great work.
What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Now, for today's video, I wanted to talk about both my overall thoughts on the Jurassic World trilogy, as well as what the reception to these movies has been. Now that all three of them are out and I've taken time to go over this period in the series, I think the general consensus so far is that while there are a ton of people who like all of these, there's also a lot of people that really don't. And there are loads of things, even for the most ardent of supporters that are fans of these films, that they think could have been done better. This isn't to say that I think the original Jurassic Park trilogy is flawless or something that is necessarily 100% better as far as the movies go themselves.
Hey, thanks for stopping by, Crawling Chaos.
But I do think that this new set of films could have benefited from a lot of adjustments to the plots, characters, themes, and focus that could have made them succeed even higher than they ultimately did. And I know it can be kind of difficult to listen to a fanboy of a giant dinosaur franchise or any movie franchise in general because there's obviously going to be some level of bias, but I do think that it's more than just saying one thing is 100% bad or one thing's 100% good. Now, I know there are a lot of things we can go over in a conversation like this, by the way, but for today's video, I wanted to single out what I think is, without a shadow of a doubt, the Achilles heel of this trilogy, and honestly, the franchise overall.
Easy, Blue.
So looking back at these movies, we can see that Jurassic World is the highest rated entry in the trilogy with the best critical reception and box office performance of the bunch. Fallen Kingdom came up way shorter with critics and audiences and made around 300.
One thing that I just want to point it out here, like, look how short this is, 16 minutes and 21 seconds. I mean, that's a pretty decent size for YouTube, but I really enjoy, I think it says something that it's very rare, as we're going to see, that you see a lot of Star Wars, even like negative Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, like video essays, criticisms and stuff like that, that feel like they have to go on for that long. I think the Jurassic World audience does not need that level of cope, in my opinion.
$350 million less. And then rounding out the trilogy, Dominion fared the worst of not only the Jurassic World series as far as critics go, but for the entire franchise in general. It made $300 million less than Fallen Kingdom, but did win over some audience members who didn't like that second movie. So from here, it's incredibly apparent that the Jurassic World trilogy is in a noticeable decline. And in my opinion, if they were to put out another one of these movies, it would make a bare minimum of $200 million less than Dominion. But I think it could even be tapping out at around the $600 to $700 million range personally, which by that time, we're talking about falling back into what the box office was for the Lost World Jurassic Park over 25 years ago. So yeah, critics don't like these movies. Audiences are very mixed on them, to say the least. And while they have made a lot of money, they've obviously been making less with each entry. So what happened? Why is it that we saw big drops between each entry? And what is it that the movies could do to fix this sort of problem? Well, to sum this all up in general, I'd like to say that the one thing we have to immediately...
I really gotta say, man, I think these come from Jurassic World Evolution to these animations. Like, I think it's very clever that he's using this to get around copyright. That's a smart motherfucker right there.
Point to, and I will be honest, this is not just endemic of the Jurassic World trilogy, but of modern Hollywood in general, is the screenwriting.
Now, where does he think he's going? When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Do you two talk a lot?
Oh, let's see.
He slid into my DMs.
Now, look, I know there are a lot of people that kind of group all three of these movies as some kind of collective thing, and I understand why they would do that. I do want to say that when you've got a...
Clayton Fioriti. I'll show you. I'll show you the name right here. It's Clayton with a K, Fioriti. Now, this guy makes really great stuff. If you like Jurassic Park, just check this dude out for sure.
A very clear sign of drop-offs and disappointment in a franchise, it's better suited to pinpoint when exactly things went wrong for people and why they are airing out their grievances, including myself. There is a big reason why Jurassic World from 2015 has a significantly higher box office and critical reception when it comes to the other movies. And yes, I will say I don't personally think it's perfect.
And let's be real here. That's because of Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver's original screenplay. Let's see, it's the Mr. Plinkett effect. It isn't, it's not though, right? Because like one thing that I noticed right away is that he's getting like right into the flaws of the movie, and he's not like being like, and I'm gonna do my Mahler imitation here, like, in writing there is something called the 3-act structure: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then the three, like, he goes out, he feels like he needs to break down writing down to its most like essential elements, because he needs to make like 6-hour fucking content for some fucking reason, and B, I think because like that is the best he can do. That is his own frame of reference, to analyze movies from the most simplistic way possible. Clayton here, he already knows you know how that. He takes it for a given that you know the basics of writing, probably because you're a Jurassic Park fan and you have basic critical reasoning skills, you know? Let's keep watching here.
Either yet still I don't think that's only due to nostalgia and high anticipation from there not being a Jurassic movie since 2001. I think the reviews would have been way more negative had that been the case, but instead it got better reception than both The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. And again, while not a perfect movie, the first entry in the Jurassic World trilogy doesn't seem to be criticized anywhere near as much as the second and third parts of that trilogy. So why is that? Well, going back to the later days of Jurassic Park 4, Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver worked with Steven Spielberg on construction of that film.
Yeah, they basically came up with the idea of Jurassic Park, and then Trevorrow and Connolly came in and sort of took their script and just made it their own worst thing, and then they wrote all the movies themselves afterwards. So yeah, I know exactly. Just see what I mean, like getting right to the point. He's not like trying to make this overly long fucking thing because he's angry about Jurassic World still after all this time. No, he has like a nuanced thing. He has a direct point to make, and he's getting right fucking to it. And I love that about Jurassic Park content. Jurassic Park content compared to Star Wars content does not waste your fucking time.
Script. Since we're talking about the writing of these movies, I thought this would be a good place to start. I know it's a long time ago, but stay with me here. The director of Jurassic Park and The Lost World, Spielberg, had 3 ideas in mind that he wanted them to implement into this draft of the story. That there be an operational theme park, that there be a man that works closely with raptors, and that a new big bad dinosaur was introduced into the plot. Colin Trevorrow was hired on as director of this movie, but told Spielberg...
Fun fact, though, actually, J.A. Bayona, the director of Fallen Kingdom, was originally supposed to be the director of Jurassic World. And I mean, look, if you know these names, if you know who Amanda Silver, Rick Jaffa, and J.A. Bayona are, if you can picture what the trilogy would look like in a world where where the first Jurassic World movie is a J.A. Bayona film, directed film, written by Silver and Jaffa, who, by the way, are now in charge of co-writing the Avatar universe and shit. Like, that is such a missed opportunity. It's damn near tragic, man. It's damn near tragic that instead Colin Trevorrow came in thinking that he was a better screenwriter than Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. By the way, that is so bizarre. And because of that, because of that choice, that ego-driven choice, that he sort of spun it out to the wonky directions that it went in. Which, by the way, the ideas that I think Trevorrow had for Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, I don't think they're bad ideas. I just think he was the worst possible fucking person to put in charge of executing them.
That there was no way that he could make the film in its current scripted form. So he got together with his writing partner, Derek Connolly, and rewrote Jurassic Park 4 into Jurassic World over a very short period of time. This was eventually shot and turned into the 4th film of the franchise, which ultimately led to Colin stepping down from director duties for the next movie, while J.A. Bayona took over. Colin still stayed on as writer, though, this time without the help of an earlier draft by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. He and Derek wrote the second movie in this trilogy, which was released to the same kind of response as The Lost World, which, if you didn't know, was both hated and loved in 1997. I'd personally say that Fallen Kingdom wound up being a little more disappointing than the second film to audiences, but I don't want to sugarcoat that film's reception either, even though I will admit that I am a big fan of it. I gotta, throw that out there while I'm giving all this information to you guys. Lost World was always looked at by critics as being nowhere near as good as Jurassic Park, and even though I love it, I gotta say I agree. Next up came the leaving of Derek Connolly and the introduction of Emily Carmichael into the writer's room. Colin Trevorrow collaborated with her on the script that eventually became Jurassic World Dominion, the lowest rated Jurassic movie ever made and the least successful film of the new trilogy. But it wasn't just those two that worked on the script.
And look at me, and look at you. Wow, this is so trippy.
Look, guys, one of the most interesting things about Jurassic World Dominion is even in the visual history book that they just released for the new trilogy, they reveal something pretty crazy about the writing themselves.
I gotta get that book, yo.
I just gotta relay this information.
Yo, wait, Jurassic World. I'm buying that book right now. Hold on. There's no fucking way I'm not getting that book. What's it called? The visual history? I am fascinated by this. I would love to make my own content about how that shit that I just said, how the movie that we could have gotten if Bayona got to direct that Silver and Jaffa script. Like, I want to make a video essay about that, so I'm gonna buy this fucking book.
You guys, honestly, along with Emily Carmichael, Trevorrow brought in a number of uncredited screenwriters to work on Jurassic World Dominion's script in an unofficial capacity, including Michael Arndt, Aaron Bergeron, and Dante Harper. Quote, "They just kind of came in and kicked the tires with me," says the director. Jurassic franchise.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It has that vibe to it, though. Like, it has that vibe of a bunch of ideas being thrown around and nothing good being solidified. Of course, you come up with the stupid fucking idea like the Lotus in that environment. That makes perfect fucking sense. JP fandom is chilling, gets less attention than Star Wars because the franchise only has one film everyone universally loves. Yeah, no, definitely. Totally right about that one.
As veteran David Koepp, who wrote the 2 Spielberg-directed Jurassic Park movies, also spent several weeks working on the Dominion script, as did Christy Wilson Cairns, the Oscar-nominated screenwriter of Sam Mendes's World War I movie, 1917.
That's fucking wild.
My people say the raptor arrived in good condition.
Now, look, I know we...
Of course. I mean, yeah, of course you get that goofy fucking spy subplot in Malta. Like, it all makes sense now, I tell you.
We can talk about a whole bunch of stuff a lot of people already have, whether it be color grading, special effects, dinosaur accuracy, or whatever have you. But in my opinion, the Achilles heel of the Jurassic World trilogy is definitely 100% the screenwriting. And I say that as someone who is not only a fan of this franchise, but one that will admit does not look back too fondly on some of these movies and their production in retrospect now that the trilogy has closed. It doesn't make me not a fan anymore. I love dinosaurs, love dinosaur movies, love the Jurassic Park series, read the books, been a big fan my entire life. I talk about really bad movies on my second channel all the time. I'm just being honest with you guys. I don't really have hate for them, although I really, really don't like Dominion that much. I will say that. I was definitely in the middle of an echo chamber when it came to excusing some of these films' flaws and constantly talking about what was next for the series on a daily basis. So much so that I will say getting away from social media is one of the most sobering things people can probably do in this day and age.
I agree, by the way. I haven't been on social media for a while. It's been kind of great.
A side note, and I think if more people did that, they'd understand a lot more about these movies and their reception as well as success. And that's not just Jurassic World movies, that's movies in Hollywood in general right now. Now, there's actually one additional thing I want to say about the writing before I really get into it, and that's that there was this big controversy surrounding the credits of the first Jurassic World when it was coming out in 2015. Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver actually filed a sort of complaint with the fact that their names were not included as screenwriters of that movie, and Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly were at first the sole people credited as to writing Jurassic World. Eventually, Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver won that case and got their names put back on it, but at the time, this was kind of a big deal. I don't want to pretend like I know what was going on with that, but judging by how much better that movie was received by people in comparison to what came after, I think it's at least partially true that Jaffa and Silver are absolutely responsible in some small way for that fourth movie's success. And they should be acknowledged as such. For those of you who don't know, this is the writing team behind the newer Planet of the Apes trilogy, a series of films that were not only big hits with revitalizing a dormant franchise, but loved by critics and audiences as well. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if...
Like, the definition of movies that have no right being that fucking good, right? Like, I remember watching Rise of the Planet of the Apes with my buddy Neil back in the day and just being like, yeah, let's just go watch a movie. And then walking away being like, what the fuck was that, dude? And then Dawn was fucking incredible, and War is like Apocalypse Now with apes. Like, this trilogy is fucking bomb as hell, and a lot of that is Jaffa, Silver, eventually Matt Reeves as well too. Though let's be real.
This was one of the reasons Steven Spielberg hired them to help make Jurassic World in the first place.
The effort in sets, props, animatronics, and the performances coming together is kind of we'll give you that. Like, I do appreciate that they did put a lot more emphasis into the practical effects into Dominion. But I think, let's be real, I think Fallen Kingdom did it a lot better and with a lot more soul too, in my opinion. I feel like you can tell that there's a lot more practical dinosaurs in Dominion, whereas I think it's a lot more better handled and a lot more used for emotional effect than in Fallen Kingdom. I mean, the best example I could think of that is the Stegosaurus getting the teeth pulled out and stuff. Like, that's all in close up and that's all animatronic, Hedgehog nerd, how you doing, buddy? Matt Reeves was amazing, and Nerdrotic is stupid for saying that he's J.J. Abrams' disciple. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that, Gary? Exactly. Yeah. Who fucking cares? He is a superior writer, and that's all that really matters when it comes to movies that he works on.
Alone their work on the cult classic science fiction horror film The Relic from the 90s. Not the greatest movie ever made, but pretty Jurassic in the grand scheme of things. So in my eyes, this was definitely a writing team with a good resume that could offer a lot of stuff to the brand. In fact, if James Cameron, the guy that made the Terminator movies, Aliens, The Abyss, which is one of my favorites
I think something that is very interesting to point out here, and now that you pointed it out, Hedgehog, let's talk about the Nerdrotic of it all here. I mean, look at the lack of fucking negativity here, though. Look at the lack of manipulative bullshit of trash and stuff. This dude is going out of his way to talk about how much he's not bringing up aliens to compare how shitty whatever Claire Deering character is, or how woke it is, or some bullshit. No, he's literally being like, oh yeah, they worked on this movie, which is not great, but worth watching, or blah blah blah. That's what real movie fandom is, and that's what modern Jurassic World, Jurassic Park fans are, people who would prefer to watch this kind of stuff than the Nerdrotic end of things. Former meth head and served time in prison, so nothing is right in that dude's head. That dude is still a drug dealer. It's just now he instead of fucking meth, he deals fucking nerd entitlement and fucking petulant rage.
If that guy picked up Rick Joff and Amanda Silver, that's saying something. We got to acknowledge that. Now, Derek Connolly, Colin Trevorrow's writing partner, was brought on to help rewrite Jurassic World, or Jurassic Park 4, whatever you want to call it back then, with Colin, and also help him write Fallen Kingdom later on. Now, this guy has gone on record to say that he doesn't really like The Lost World of Jurassic Park 3 at all, which, fair enough, that's his opinion, but he hadn't even seen the original Jurassic Park until Colin sat him down to do this job several years ago. His other writing credits include
that's fucking okay. Wow.
Things like Kong Skull Island, Monster Trucks, and Detective Pikachu. So yeah,
Kong Skull Island is a fucking bomb ass movie though. Let's be real. That movie fucking rips, but that movie rips because of the direction more than because of the script. The script is real fucking bland. And then Jordan Vogt Roberts takes that bland script and just injects life into it with his direction and the performances, we need more of these reviews. Well, yeah, man, Clayton Fioriti. Definitely check them out, thing I love most about both Jurassic Park and Star Wars series are the cheap knockoffs they inspired. If not for Jurassic Park, yes, I was about to say Carnosaur, dude. Hell yeah, brother! I fucking remember waiting for Jurassic Park to come out on VHS and just renting Carnosaur over and over again. Yeah, dude. Yeah, 100%.
They're very different credits, to say the least.
Mommy's very angry.
Holy!
I think when we talk about why the Jurassic World trilogy wound up being something of a disappointment for a lot of people, the obvious answer to that question, in my opinion, is that the writing for these three movies wasn't in check at all when it came time to making them. I know that this isn't necessarily the end-all be-all of a film, since there are multiple ghostwriters in Hollywood, which I bring up specifically because Jurassic Park 3 is known to have had a lot more people working on it over the years than what we initially thought, but also because once you get to retcons, goofy dialogue, bad remakes of older scenes, and just flat-out rushed storytelling when it came to where these films went, we have to look at these complaints honestly and use them to perfect the franchise in the future if the goal is to actually make better movies for me, you, the people making the movies, everybody around the world. Brother, you know what I'm saying?
You are in the right place. I love Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. That is when me and Lindsay first reconnected, that is the first movie we watched together, because she's a big Jurassic Park fan too. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, that movie is fucking killer, and frankly, it's my second favorite Jurassic Park movie, hands down. Battle Beyond the Stars, for real. Shame that the menu wasted the great setup from that ending. Yeah, dude, I'm with you 100% on that.
You got to take criticisms seriously when it comes to something like that. And I know that COVID probably had a lot to do with some of the writing issues, but let's go through things one thing at a time. The best thing that I can compare all this stuff to is when you're an athlete on a football team or a professional fighter, in the UFC or something, and you've got weak points in your game, it's important for someone on your team to tell you, hey man, hold up. I think we need to work on this before you go back out there, because if we don't, you're going to get hurt. and get hurt bad, which if you're looking at how these movies have been performing and how critics have been receiving them, I'd say we really need to sit down and have that conversation. If the Jurassic Park series doesn't do that, I think it will inevitably lose more of the audience and more esteem from critics because it will just continue to go down into that declining spiral. And when you don't address problems, they tend to pile up on top of more problems. So while I know that there are some people that are more disappointed in the fact that certain dinosaur species didn't show up, like the Spinosaurus, or certain characters didn't have interesting action set pieces, or maybe that.
And I think that's the difference, right? Is that I think that like he's talking about the people with these types of disappointments where like the lack of Spinosaurus or blah 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 and shit like that. They are a minority. They are there, but they're a very small minority in the Jurassic Park fandom. Whereas I feel like in the Star Wars fandom, these types of criticisms, like, oh, well, how come this character didn't, show up with this like accurate costume, like that sort of shit, is a lot more prevalent in the Star Wars fandom. Jurassic Park 3 is the blandest, but Dominion is the most. Yeah, with you 100% on that one, man. Totally in sync with you on that one.
That the movie wasn't filmed immaculately. The biggest issue to be addressed should really be the scripts, lest even more issues arise because of that oversight. There is a very obvious reason Steven Spielberg did not write Jurassic Park in 1993, or The Lost World for that matter in 1997, or even some of his other gigantic hits. And that's because he knows that those duties would be better suited to someone else whom he can trust to deliver something to the team that would help make a successful movie. I think the series needs to do the same as soon as possible. Just imagine if Fallen Kingdom and Dominion were both directed by the same people, J.A. Bayona and Colin Trevorrow, but written by Rick Joff and Amanda Silver, or even David Koepp, for that matter, the guy that wrote Jurassic Park and The Lost World. Now you tell me, how much more of a success do you think this trilogy would have been based on just that one simple adjustment? And if you love these movies with all your heart and you think they're the greatest things ever made and you're a giant fan of them, I get it, man. Look, I grew up watching really bad Godzilla movies. I still think that the prequel trilogy that George Lucas made, while not perfect, Revenge of the Sith kicks. But I will also admit, even though I'm a massive fan of The Lost World, Jurassic Park, and I'm a massive fan of like Michael Crichton's books and Jurassic Park in general as a series, what Stan Winston did, what all the ILM, techniques and stuff that went into making this stuff awesome. I gotta say, man, creatively, they need a different writing team for the dialogue, for actually plot structure. If you look at Jurassic World Dominion on a logic basis, it kind of falls apart. Like with the Biosin Valley stuff in general, like let's actually talk about the fact that all these
you see, like right here, he's talking about the logical inconsistencies in the plot for a couple of seconds towards the end of a 16-minute long video. All right, Mahler and Critical Drinker take that and make like 5 minute to 6 hour videos just complaining that shit, dude. Again, the waters are fine in the Jurassic Park fandom, guys. We could use some more numbers. If you guys want to subscribe to Clayton Fioriti and Jurassic Time, listen to the Missing Compies podcast. There's a lot of good stuff out there for Jurassic Park fans.
Dinosaurs have little brain chips in their minds, right? Because that tells them where to go at the end of the movie into that little bubble that Biosin has, that circle. So if that's true, why do they even need an aerial deterrent system for the pterosaurs? They already have brain implants that tell them where to go. And if that's also true, how come all the Dilophosaurs were stuck in the tunnel just to kill Dodson? Why didn't they go to the valley or whatever?
What's your story?
On top of that, why would you create some sort of safety protocol that would have all the dinosaurs enter in one little area because you're trying to protect them when you know that the dinosaurs just end up fighting each other? Also, everything to do with the actual Giganotosaurus and how it's presented in the movie, what it does, it's not intimidating. It doesn't kill anybody in the film. It gets beat up by the T-Rex at the end after beating the T-Rex up, which is something we've seen again and again in these movies. And I really think they've got to take the time to sit down and say, hey, man, our logic here needs a lot of restructuring. That's not to throw any writer under the bus. That's not to really, do something like insult anybody's intelligence. I'm just going to say, as someone that was not a fly on the wall.
Bro, yeah, no, you get it, dude. See, that's the thing. I'm all for like long ass fucking content. Like this dude Billiam does like 5-6 hour long videos about the TV show Lost. I love that shit because it's not whiny, it's not complaining. The dude's a huge fan, and it's a huge passionate deep dive not only into the seasons but into everything that happened around them, and it's super fun to watch. Like I don't know how anybody could listen to Mahler drone on for how much he hates something for 6 minutes, man. Like that to me is like peak annoying.
Wall when these movies were getting made, there's definitely a reason the 2015 film was held much more higher in esteem than what came after it. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect, but if I had to point at one thing, it wouldn't be CGI. It wouldn't be color grading. It wouldn't even necessarily be direction. I really think the biggest problem, and the one thing that would have elevated this material greatly, would be the writing. But hey, guys, as a fan of this franchise and as someone who's probably going to go watch The Lost World Jurassic Park right now after
Oh,
doing
yeah,
this
brother.
video, I just wanted to ask all of you guys what your thoughts are on these films. How do you think the franchise can improve in the future? Do you agree with me about the writing credits of these movies? And what do
So he's getting towards the end here, wrapping down the video. So we're gonna go ahead and just exit out of this. As you can see, guys, like it's just like good, legitimately solid content that I think is just accessible and fun, and it's celebratory, and loves the franchise. It's very honest at the same time, but at the same time, but also like it's critical and stuff. Let's go to Star Wars theory. And by the way, before I do this, I do want to give a shout out to Blurry Films, who I've had on before. He's a really great dude. Star Wars girl. He's a really great dude, really awesome guy, makes awesome content. I think he's working on a short film based on Game of Thrones. It should be pretty cool. And yeah, let's go ahead and just dig in to a sort of similar. And by the way, the numbers here, right? 3.2 million subs compared to the 300 something thousand subs that Clayton has. Total bummer. But let's just see what this guy's up to these days. Let's see. Trying to find one that isn't too fucking long or too annoying. Let's just go with this one right here.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, so there's a lot of talk going around Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2 coming out tomorrow. We're gonna like the announcement at 4:00 from Empire Magazine. Yes, I'm watching Revenge of the Sith right now. It is dope as hell. Also, this saber is now on sale on the site for the next 48 hours. If you want to grab it, theorysabers.com. It is.
I like how right away, right? Just playing into the themes. You got to get the 30 seconds into the video. You got to plug the fucking sponsor or whatever, something to buy and shit.
Freaking sick. All right, so back to the video. So I had the plug, right? No one else is going to do it. I got to do it myself. So tomorrow we're getting an announcement from Empire Magazine.
That's why this video exists.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
This video exists just for that. Everything else is just in service so he could do that at the beginning of this video. Let's be real here.
2 might be coming out, might happen. Now, the reason this is all the buzz is because they did a post today saying hello there, and that there's a big Star Wars announcement coming tomorrow at 4 p.m.
I like how little he cares, that he's just totally backlit right now. No effort put into this video. He just does not give a shit. He is using Star Wars to sort of just sell his thing and plug it at the beginning. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I think it says something about the state of the fandoms, you know?
Now, someone that I know, and I know you guys know that I know very closely in the Star Wars space, did a interview with Empire a little while ago, just very recently. So all of this is kind of now starting to add up, and I don't really know what their plans are with doing all of that, but I guess we're going to wait and see. If Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2 does come out, then I mean, geez, please no Riva, please just like be a much better script. Please just focus more on the characters like Obi-Wan and Vader and Anakin and Obi-Wan if we go flashbacks, and not so much on the other characters that really aren't important. I mean, Leia is important, but it's more so about Obi-Wan. And I really hated how Obi-Wan freaking left Tatooine,
There you go.
and how Reva knows that Obi-Wan Kenobi is protecting Luke, who is Anakin's son, who is Vader. There's just so much in there that just destroys what George built. As much as I want to see Ewan and Hayden back again, and that's like all I want to see. I don't even care about anything else, to be honest.
It's just so like negatively fucking coded so far,
pretty cool boy for life. And you guys know
It's like I feel like the Clayton Fioriti video is more critical, but it's like more substantial. This guy is just sort of going over grievances, you know.
I've been pushing the prequels since before they were popular in the mainstream media, and I attest to that. You know, all the years of being made fun of and all that is just, you know, with the cardboard cutout of Anakin behind me, now everyone's, you know, all for it, and that's great. But point proven, I want to see Hayden and Ewan, but I just want it to be a really great script for Star Wars, for Anakin, Obi-Wan, Vader, and I just don't think Joby Harold is
Tell
the
him
right
Hedgehog
guy
nerd.
for it. I don't think Deborah Chow is the right director for it. I'm hoping someone a little more competent and a little more passionate about the story and much more educated on Star Wars and where George kind of, you know, left these characters could really.
That's another big thing too, right? Is that Star Wars fans think they know better than others about like what is and shouldn't be. And don't get me wrong, like all the fans everywhere have an idea of what they want, but like to the point where they're going after creators and studios and being like, oh, George's vision. Like nobody ever talks about like Crichton's vision or Spielberg's vision. And I think that's because again, I think Jurassic Park fans just have a more nuanced understanding of the industries and the art forms that these uh you know movies and books live in. So he has nothing really to say, but he needs to complain. I'm sure if they give this lad everything he wants, oh no, exactly, because that's what this fan base is now. Just a bunch of complaining. You know, she's a woman, of course she's bad. You mean at the times that when prequels were so hated that Ahmed Best would almost killed himself and Lucas stopped making films? Right, the sort of stuff that like this sort of channel fosters to like Kelly Marie Tran and shit, you know?
We take this story to where it's supposed to be, and I'm hoping that that person is going to be, you know, John Favreau and Dave Filoni, or you know, Tony Gilroy even coming in there, because he does make good stuff, even though Andor was a sleepy fest for me. It was really well made, and the story was good. So I think if we have, you know, a different team, maybe a different vision, I think a lot of great stuff can be made, and we can get an absolute amazing
Seems
product.
so over it,
But if it's
like
going to
very
be, you
lazy.
know, the same old thing from Obi-Wan Kenobi season 1, then I'm wary. I'm worried. You know, I'm concerned. Hopefully, it's not going to be another, you know, obsession with Riva again the whole time. You know, we got to focus on Obi-Wan. We got to focus on and on Vader. Um, that's really the most important thing. You know, give Hayden much more screen time. He needs it, and I want to see it. So we'll see what happens, man. Hopefully, it's not just like some little article that they are making us all go crazy for. But we'll see what happens. All right, see you later. Theory.
All right, guys, and that's Star Wars theory, and you know I've covered a lot of like nerdrotic and geeks and gamers and stuff like that, and you guys are very much aware of that sort of content here. That's the best part of historical accuracy. Yeah, the captain go on a rescue mission as one of his movies for crying out loud. Very true. Many times prequel. Yeah. Let's see here. Filoni and Favreau are hated now, so don't pretend. Yeah, I mean, as soon as they can, as soon as it benefits them, they're gonna totally, and they have turn on both of those creators. Secondary character, Jesus, are sick of these slides. No, you guys are absolutely right, guys. And so yeah, guys, that is what it for today's videos, dude. Like honestly, I really enjoyed this format. I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did. I would love to know uh how you guys feel about this, where I'm just coming up here instead of taking weeks to put these video essays together. I like just create a live stream package and shit. I think this is the new way forward. And that's good to hear, man. That's good to hear. I really had a good time today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another similar video. I think our similar type of live stream and stuff like that. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for your comments here. You know, seriously, like it's and trying to find the time to devote back into making video essays has been difficult lately. So this is gonna be like something new for the channel. So that being said, I've been awesome. All you guys in the chat, anyone who sees this afterwards, you guys are super fucking awesome. I mean, you guys are super awesome. I've been Ed. Until next time, peace.